Before the Riderflex podcast episode of the day, a quick word from our sponsor and friends at Marketing 360.
Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing 360. Fuel your brand.
Andrew Pudalov on the Riderflex podcast. How you doing, Andrew?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. I appreciate you being on the show. Love your story. I want to get all into Rush Bowls and find out how you did it. But first, let's learn about you personally. Tell me about Andrew. Like where you grew up, a little bit about your parents, maybe some early life stuff.
Sure. First and foremost, thank you for having me on the podcast today. I must say I had a pretty easy, comfortable life as a young child. I grew up in, as they say, Long Island, New York. I was pretty active in sports in school. I played a lot of lacrosse, indoor and outdoor. And I grew up not too far from the beach, and I used to go to the beach a lot at the end of the day. And no, I'm not a boater, and I don't surf. It's beyond my capabilities, probably. Certainly surfing is really hard. But I would tell you, my dad was extremely hardworking. He was a judge, and before that, he was an attorney in the state of New York. And my mom was a school teacher, and then later on, she was home. I was the youngest of 4 children. All have been extremely successful in all different industries, from corporate, business, law, and it's really, we have a close-knit family and very fortuitous that way.
Your folks still in New York? Are they still there?
Yes, they're still in the tri-state area, and
I don't
still
hear
alive.
That. Okay, still alive. I don't hear that thick Long Island accent though. A lot of times I visit with people from there. You've lost a little bit of that being in Colorado now for so many years.
Yeah, well, I lived in New York City for 15 years, and then Colorado be 17 years. So I've been here since for a long time. So it's really more my home than anywhere else.
When you talk to your mom or dad, does the accent come out a little bit? Probably so if you call back home, huh?
A little bit. I try to hide it pretty as best I can, but it pops out. You can hear it in certain words like "your" and some of those notoriously East Coast enunciations.
You went to State University up in Albany.
Sure.
How did you decide to go there, and walk us through? Did you know what you wanted to be at that point? Because you said you were the youngest, so already you're having to follow some of your siblings, and I don't know if you're getting pressure from your dad to be a lawyer, but how did you decide to go to school there, and did you know what you wanted to be?
Yeah, and I always wanted to be a doctor, actually.
Okay.
I wanted to go, I kind of had to go to a state school. I visited a lot of schools, and SUNY Albany at the time was a great fit for me, and I felt very comfortable there.
Okay.
And I was studying pre-med my first year, and truthfully, my brother was doing extremely well in business, my oldest brother.
Okay.
And, I guess what you get with siblings, I'm like, if he can do that, I certainly can do that. And I gave up medicine and applied for the business school. Now, you had to have, I think it was like a 3-4 or something like that to get into the business school. And you had to apply by, I believe, your, mid sophomore year. But all the classes I took were certainly in the science field, being a doctor, organic chemistry. So a lot of the business classes that I had to take were easier, honestly. And I was lucky enough to go to their business school, and at the time, it was a really strong business school, and I got a lot of my education in business really on an undergraduate level there.
I see. Okay. Now, was your mom upset because you decided not to be a doctor? Was your mom like, I wanted at least one doctor?
I I think, and no one in my family is a doctor. So my uncle was a veterinarian. There
Okay.
was never a pressure they never pressured us on the occupation that
Okay.
we needed to be, though there was a lot of pressure to be successful. And I don't know if that was self or through siblings or whatever it may be, but everyone worked hard. I can tell you, everyone worked hard in my family, and that helps a lot.
No doubt about it. Right. I mean, same for me. I get a lot of work ethic from my folks, and my dad worked in the oil field for many years, and same way. Yeah. You get your work ethic by the people you're around, usually when you're young. Walk us through your early career then in New York. You went to work for Bear Stearns first, I think. I don't know. Walk us through some of your career before the entrepreneurial journey. Go for it.
Yeah, it was quite a journey actually in finance. So I started work right away. I was lucky. I had some really good work experience over the summer, and I always laugh. I was offered a job at the time for like 40,000 at NatWest Bank. I don't know if they still exist, but I ended up taking a job making 18,000 a year at Bear Stearns. And it just resonates with me because I took a job. I wanted to gather the most experience that I can. And Bear Stearns was, at the time before it went under, was the brash investment bank. I specialized in kind of an assistant to a trading desk and a management trainee program that I was in. And I did that for a little bit. And I then was recruited to go to Payne Weber. And at Payne Weber, I worked on a CMO sales desk. CMO is collateralized mortgage obligation. And at the time, it was a brand new product. I then was fortuitous enough, got recruited to Morgan Stanley. And at Morgan Stanley, I was on the interest rate trading desk, helping them out in more of a junior position, working my way up. I then went to Credit Lyonnais. I was with Morgan Stanley 4 years or so. Then I went to Credit Lyonnais roughly to run the short end of their trading book in interest rate derivatives and Canadian book, which was, again, all really positive and very intense jobs. And then I was recruited to be global head of derivative trading for National Australia Bank, the largest bank in Australia. I did that, but it was an incredible jobs, I would say, in many ways, but they were very intense jobs. So I was gambling on behalf of the bank. So I wasn't brokering positions or anything like that. I was taking positions for the bank, and I was good at it. I was a professional gambler, pretty much, with the bank's money, and I would get bonuses and salaries based on this expertise. And it taught me a ton. I always laugh, you were treated like a king in that business. So you're producing this revenue and you were treated extremely well. You were taken out all the time from brokers, whoever else. And I had quite a good life in New York City. I lived in Manhattan for 15 years doing that.
Were you married at the time?
At the end of it, at National Australia Bank time, I got married. And again, that type of job, you don't stay in it for really long periods of time because it's so taxing on your soul. And it's just a taxing job. You're making, again, it's extremely mathematical. You're making educated bets based on positioning and everything else. And, some people have a natural talent for it, and not a lot of people, I would say. So I was good at it, but it wasn't something that I really longer term wanted to say, this is it, this is, utopia for me. I think it was something that I missed the interaction with people. And go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I was gonna say, okay, all right, go ahead. So you because you're dealing with numbers and spreadsheets and things like that, you're thinking, even though you're making a lot of money, you're getting wined and dined all the time, you're living a pretty good life in New York, something's missing for you.
Yeah, it was not satisfying and it was exhausting. It's a very tough job. People don't, it's first of all, it's highly competitive to get, especially back then. And then it's an extremely stressful job. That's, it's as much as I can say. And everyone going in knows it. It's a very highly sought job, but it wasn't satisfying for me. And for me, it's not just about money. I want to be happy and everything else.
Are you having conversations with your wife at this time saying, man, I don't, I need to, I'm trying to find myself. I'm having a little midlife crisis here. Or this is not quite satisfying for me. I want to do something different. You guys starting to have those conversations. And then and then walk us into
the transfer,
the transition point and how that tied into 9/11 a little bit. But yeah, talk to me. Were you having early conversations, and then did 9/11 like trigger it for you? Walk us through that.
Yeah, I would say, and I told my wife early on I wanted to move out to Colorado before we got married.
I see.
And I always loved, I traveled out west a lot, even as a child, going and visiting national parks out west. And it just was a love of mine. It was very deep-seated kind of attachment there. I didn't have any family in Boulder, but I told her early on that someday I'd really like to move there. And I think she said, okay, yeah, whatever. Sounds good. But we're getting married. We'll see how that plays out.
Had she been west? Had she been to Boulder or anything? Okay.
No. She's traveled, but not. I travel a lot as a family. And
was she from New York?
Yes. Originally from Long Island, and lived in the city. And that's a whole nother podcast how we met. But
is it were you like being wined and dined by a client, or was she a client? I mean, what's the short? Give us the super short version.
No, I mean, we lived in a apartment building, and she was on the same floor. I asked her out a few times, and she blew me off basically, and I was like, that's not going to work here. and eventually we met a few times, and that's where it really we got married. So
I can almost hear the conversation. She's from Long Island, never been out west to Colorado, and you're like, hey, I want to move to Boulder. And she's like, huh? Yeah, whatever. I mean, Boulder from New York City is it's almost two different planets, quite frankly.
Yeah. But when you look at it on a broader view, major airport an hour away, that flies pretty much everywhere, educated population, a very entrepreneurial population, very and a very good area to raise children for schools and everything else. And when I ended up moving out there, my son was 3 and my daughter was 3 and my son was 5, so it was a big transition to move there. And we can get. So you
finally talked her into moving. Now, did you say, hey, let's move out there, I want to do something different, or did you had decided we're going to open our own business, let's do it there? Which one came first, the move or the business, or it happened together?
It happened pretty much together. I basically said, I want to move to Boulder, and I'll start a business there.
I see.
And the transition really was dictated by 9/11.
Yeah.
To digress a little bit, my wife was in the tower in 93 when they bombed it. She was working for Cantor. I was in Midtown working for the NAB. And then there was, we lived in Manhattan. We had a nanny. It was my wife's first day back from maternity was 9/11. So she then worked in the 20s or 30s. I was in Midtown and 9/11 happened. And obviously in finance, in doing what I was doing, I lost a lot of friends that day. And I decided right there, I wanted to talk to her, and the horrors of that day made the transition happen way quicker. So 9/11 happens. I kind of organized everything, just move out to Boulder, a couple of years later.
So let me ask you this. Did you say, hey, I'm quitting my job. We got enough money in savings to do this move. I'm going to go try. That takes some guts to do that. What that conversation sound like with your wife? Where you're like, listen, I know I'm making like $500,000 a year or whatever you were pulling down at the time.
Right.
I'm making a shit ton of money, and we're just going to quit all this and move to Boulder and maybe it'll work.
Yeah. You know, I would tell you, as people fretted, I quit my job, bought a house, and started, and had a mortgage and started a business. I don't think it's the smartest thing to do ever. I was extremely, I think, confident that whatever it took, if it was me digging ditches, I would figure out a way.
Okay. All right.
And no matter what it was, I was very driven to make it work. And that may not be, as easy, or, I wanted to be creative, which is my number one thing. I wanted to be creative, and I wanted to have customer interaction.
Did your wife quit her job too?
Well, she quit earlier because then she was raising the kids. So after she was on maternity, she worked a little bit but after 9/11, she basically quit. So she was raising, the two infants, basically.
You said earlier you were a professional gambler. I mean, you just pushed your chips all in the middle of the table right there. No income, moved to Boulder, 2 young kids, bought a house, started business. Okay, yeah, that takes balls, my friend.
Yeah, my whole life was risk assessment, right? Making gambles, and you better be able to gamble on yourself. But I don't want to make it seem easy. It was terrifying in many ways. I just didn't try to think about it that way. I just try to focus on the positive.
How did you talk to us about how you decided what to do? Walk us through that. I think you had a friend that had a smoothie business or something, but walk us into the transition on deciding what to open as a business.
Yeah, so I wanted to open because figuring what I wanted to do, I really missed that customer interaction. I wanted to deal with people. When you were running a trading desk, basically, you're not dealing with the customers. You're dealing with other banks and everything like that. So I missed that customer interaction, seeing people's faces, their reactions, and I wanted to do something a little different. A friend of mine had a smoothie type of business, and he was extremely creative, brilliant guy, honestly. So I saw his business, and I was telling him basically what I wanted to do. And he was like, yeah, you should open one of these in Boulder. And I'm like, I'm happy to do that, but I really want to do something a little different with it. And then the birth of 17 years ago, the birth of the bowl. So I started doing bowls, and he really didn't want to do that. He didn't see that as a direction he wanted to pursue, but I did. And I wanted to do something, people were doing smoothies, right? I wanted to do something that was meal oriented. I have a good palate, but I also like texture in my mouth. I wanted the smoothiness, the silkiness of the blended fruits. I wanted the crunch of the granola, the honey, in the toppings of fruit, whatever it may be. I like the mouthfeel. I like the flavor, and I wanted a meal-based focus. I didn't want to be a snack. I didn't want anything like that. And that really gave birth to Rush Bowls. That was Rush Bowls. So we were doing bowls 17 years ago. We were certainly, if not first to market, one of the early ons. And as a company early on, one thing about being near a campus, the students are very progressive in their thoughts, right? They really took the product and were willing to try this. If I tried this product, somewhere in a rural area, it probably wouldn't have the success it does today. It would have taken time to build it. But certainly the students were very accepting of it. And quite frankly, college kids are very easy customers for the most part. And I was very lucky. I had some great staff, and that's how the company got built. And certainly it was really hard work.
So the first store was right by the campus, was right by CU in Boulder.
The Hill,
that was your first
in Boulder, correct.
Okay. And was it called Rush Bowls when you first opened?
It was called, like, for a year, it was not even, I think, Zoom, and then we called it Rush Bowls.
Okay.
We changed the name.
I mean, we talked about the fact that you had guts earlier, leaving your job and coming up to New York. And then when you did make a decision on what you wanted to do as a business owner, you picked the the restaurant industry, food industry, which
Yeah.
I just want to tie all that together.
Yeah.
You picked one of the hardest industries to be in, that has one of the highest fail rates that I can think of. And
Yeah.
then wow. Okay. So you had one shop in Boulder. Now, what do you remember what it took money wise to get that first store open? Was that a $500,000 investment? What did it take to get that first location open? I'm just curious.
I don't recall really. I think it was certainly probably around closer to 200 opposed to
200.
500,
Okay.
or
Oh, okay.
or around maybe less. I don't recall exactly because it's so long ago.
Yeah.
But
Well, I'm just curious. The reason I asked that specific question, Andrew, is, so many of our listeners, they're always that moment where you're leaving your job to start, and then how to get started and how to survive during those, the first year or two. So that was the only source of income you had, was your first location there in Boulder. Did you invest your own money then? Did you have to raise cash? Did you have your own savings? And what kind of advice would you give listeners on that topic, by the way, to get that first location open?
sure. First of all, I used my own money,
Okay.
and I think if you can raise cash and you're not giving up too much, I think that's certainly an avenue to go. Certainly I started a little later in life than a lot of people, and I had success previously in my career that afforded me that opportunity. But it isn't easy, and it wasn't just, oh, what's Rush Bowls, and it was stellar. I had to explain what the product was, and as much as it's turned out so good so far, there were, and I know we'll get to that also, there were a lot of challenges, up and down throughout the life of it. So, and continue to be challenges.
Well, that first store in Boulder, how many years was that location open before you opened a second location?
I opened another location I opened another location maybe 5 years after.
Okay, so the first 5 years, let's call it, one location, one Rush Bowl location. I mean, as a former retailer myself, a little shop like that, next to a college, after all the bills are paid, is still not going to kick off what you were making in New York for you personally, right?
Right.
I'm guessing. So you still took a pay cut those first 5 years. Is that accurate?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this was to combine, get a quality of life too. So, and what's the value on quality of life? Well, for me at the time, and still continues to be, is high. So, Boulder provides that. Colorado generally provides a great quality of life, whether it's sunshine and everything else. So I didn't just do it because of the money. Like you said, the restaurant industry, there's certainly easier ways to make money. That's one thing I've learned. Like, this is definitely a path that's more challenging than some other paths. But the path I originally was on was one of the most challenging paths also, to be, run a trading desk. So nothing comes easy, at least didn't for me. Now, some people get lucky, God bless. That's fantastic. Right. I wasn't lucky. I worked really hard at it.
Those first couple of years, was it you and your wife working the counter, working the shop?
No, it was me. Certainly, I was working crazy amount of hours. Matter of fact, I would park the car and not remember where I parked it at the end of the day. So, and then I hired, two managers actually at the time. One is our senior vice president of our franchising, Nicole, and she been with me for a long time. She understands and loves the brand and is every part of that. The other person, who was my first two hires, she ended up working for my sister in New York City. So after she graduated, I sent her out to my sister, and because she was really talented person.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Your first two hires. That's fantastic. Wow. And one of them is heading up the franchise. Okay. Wow. Very good. I just wanted to know a little bit about those early years there. That early period. So what I hear you saying is, hey, look, I was making good money in New York, but I wasn't completely fulfilled. I wanted a different lifestyle. Even if I couldn't make as much money at first, I wanted a different life for my family. We took major risks. We quit our jobs, but we had some money saved up. We came out to Boulder, and I invested cash in my first shop, and then I worked my ass off for a few years to make sure that shop made it, and hired good people and took care of them. That was a major move. Congratulations on just getting through that transition. And oh, by the way, having two small kids at the same time at home.
Yeah.
I mean, congratulations on making it through those first few years and taking that risk. Right now, probably before we get into the franchise and the growth of the business, let's do this for the listeners. Just tell us today, give us the Rush Bowls overview. Do like a 3-minute kind of overview of where the company stands today, just so everybody knows what we're talking about. And then I'll ask you some questions about the growth of the franchise. And by the way, for the listeners, it's rushbowls.com if they want to look that up. But go ahead, Andrew. Give us like the 3-minute overview of Rush Bowls. Go for it.
Sure. So we've obviously come a long way. Currently, Rush Bowls has 33 stores throughout the U.S. I also have a wholesale company that is kind of just waiting for the growth of the franchising. I launched it earlier and kind of now it's on the side. But my main focus is franchising. And we've grown really since 2016 to 33 stores. We plan on opening another, hopefully 16, 17 stores this year to be up to 50.
Wow.
And we've had a lot of great growth. But along with that great growth, you have to do a great job supporting your partners. And franchising is no different than any other business, I would say. They're your partners. They may like what you're doing, they may not like what you're doing, but you have to support them, because if you're not growing and they're not doing well, the franchise system's not going to do well. And we're really lucky with our partners that we have now. We're lucky for our growth, and really the industry as a whole. We're fast casual health food. It's really an incredible area.
Fast casual health food. So is it 1,000 square feet typically, or what's the size of the store? And for the listeners too, you might talk a little bit about some of the product, Rush Bowls, and some of the, go ahead.
Sure. First of all, we really have a diversified size, but we recommend 1,000 square feet.
Okay.
700 to 1,200 square feet is generally ideal. That's very different than some of our competitors. A lot of the competitors in the space will do 2,000, 2,500, more of a sit-down concept that a much more broader appeal. So broader, they do salads, they do other stuff like that. We're focused on Rush Bowls and smoothies, and aside, like other items that complement that. But we're the best of breed, and we do bowls no different than Starbucks doing coffee. We do bowls better than everyone else. And that's because we don't skimp on ingredients. We have really healthy, incredible flavors. And early on, based on my background, I was always looking for diversification in flavor profiles. So we do really unique flavors. We were never just acai bowls. So early on, I always knew that I don't want to just be acai. I want to be green tea. I want to be spicy. I want to be, protein focused, very flavorful, savory almost to the degree. Peanut butter and jelly. We grind our own peanuts in front of the customer, and it's unsalted granulated peanuts, and there's no oils, anything else. So health focused in the industry without being preachy. We have anything can be made vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free. We don't upcharge for dietary needs, which is also unusual within the field. And it's grab and go, it's in and out. And I think a lot of the success, especially with COVID, a lot of the success of our business is the fact that it is simple. It's very focused. We're best of breed, but we're not a deli. We're not doing everything poorly. We're doing bowls and smoothies extremely well. And bowls are 80, 90% of our business.
Bowls
certainly
are 80
it's
or
very
90%.
focused.
Okay.
Yes. And demographically, it's really 50-50 men, women. So the health food and the health focus of our company, when it started more college orientation, it has brought into a 3-year-old to a 50-year-old, right? So it's really a broad customer base that are focused on health. And that focus over the years, over 17 years, has really changed. And one of the reasons I started this company, when I would go out to eat in New York City, the little kids had a choice: grilled cheese, hot dog, or chicken fingers, basically. That was it. A lot of this health orientation has come after the fact. And I feel that we were pretty much ahead of the curve on it.
Okay.
And we continue to be innovating and more of a national approach. So when we look, there's not super regional. And when I say that, our stores can be, in Connecticut, it could be in Texas, it can be in Portland, it can be in Tacoma, it could be Ohio, it could be Indiana. It's all over the US, which is very different than a lot of companies in this field. A lot of them are super regionals. And I felt no different than, I bring up Starbucks a lot because I try to emulate what they've done, because they've been brilliant. Whether you like their coffee or not, it's almost irrelevant. Everyone knows what Starbucks is. Mm-hmm. So I really enjoy, I really appreciate, is a better terminology, what they were able to accomplish. And in certain ways, I try to emulate what they're doing and grow the business, piece by piece. But again, if our franchisees aren't successful, we wouldn't be growing, and certainly we would have other challenges. And
why did you, well, let me ask you this first. I want to get into the franchise. I want to ask you a couple of questions on why you got to, into the franchise piece. But first, on the product, am I buying it as a snack as I cruise past one of your stores, like in between meals, or do I buy a bowl for a meal, or both?
It's a meal. Generally speaking, our sales are busiest over meal times. It's also big. It's a 16 ounces. So think of a pint of health food opposed to sizing wise as to, what you're consuming. It's very filling, and it's low calorically because we don't adulterate it with sugars, sorbets, or whatever else. That's how flavor wise, without naming competitors, but people put sorbets in or some concoction or some, we take actual real fruit, whether it's acai, it's pure acai. So we don't adulterate things, and the flavor is way different, and it's our success, really.
Okay. How many stores did you have before you decided to franchise?
Really one.
Oh,
two. We had a corporate store in Denver that's still there. So 2 stores.
Okay. And why the decision to franchise? How did you get there? What, did somebody say, hey, you should franchise these, or how did you get to that point?
Well, from day one, when I had my first store, everyone told me to franchise.
I see.
And because it looked like a franchise. I built it just because of how I thought it would look, but people felt it was really cool looking, and they're like, well, you should replicate it. It looks like it's been replicated. Okay. And I just felt it was a very effective way to get it out on a national approach. I felt it was really important. I wanted to reach and grow the company, and franchising afforded me the opportunity to do that. Now, franchising is hard. You have to do it, very well, and it takes a lot of time and effort and money and everything else to do it. And there's a lot of legal aspects to it, and making sure everyone's following the rules, that they have a bowl in Glastonbury, Connecticut, tastes exactly like the bowl in College Station, Texas. That's right. So there's a lot of standardization there, and there's a lot of different personalities. So you kind of have to manage that. And I felt we had a product that was a winner. And the one thing I will tell you to this day, whoever tastes the product loves the product. So it's really execution.
Did you have to raise a lot of cash to get the franchise piece going, or still your own deal, or
still my own deal? Still my own deal.
Wow. You're still 100% owner.
Yep.
Wow. 33 stores franchised, and you didn't have to raise cash, and you don't have a bunch of people on your cap table and call on saying, where's my money, and all this other crap. Okay, great. Congratulations. I didn't know that. I just assumed you'd raised a bunch of cash from some folks over in Boulder.
Right now it's just Andrew, Pudalov on the cap table now.
Wow.
That may change, but
okay. I'm just telling you right now, I'm blown away by that. I had no idea that was the case. So when I was studying for you and getting ready for the podcast, I was just like, okay, so he opened a store, then he met some rich friends in Boulder. They gave him some cash, and then they franchised it. I mean, I just assumed that was the story, right? I mean, I think most people would assume that that was the story. I'm really impressed that you have grown a 33 store franchise on your own without raising cash. That's a major, that's a major accomplishment. Congratulations.
Yeah, and I had help and assistance in different ways over the years. It wasn't like, you don't build
Yeah.
these things
Yeah.
snap over finger. But currently, I am the only one on the cap table, and
Wow.
yeah, it's all me, for better or for worse, but certainly for better. It's unusual. A lot of franchises that have at this size or even earlier have some sort of private equity, and I think part of our success is the fact that we don't. I'm not beholden to anyone. So, private equity, when you deal with private equity, there's a price to be paid for everything, certainly. And I understand banking better than most. So I feel that I have a lot more freedom on how we run the company. And we constantly want to serve an incredible product opposed to, cheapening things just to make a dollar. Our reputation is too important to us.
That's great to hear, Andrew. Yeah, it's challenging enough to deal with what you said earlier, the personalities of the franchisees. I mean, you're talking people who, it's their business to a certain extent, but they got to follow certain rules, big personalities. A lot of them are entrepreneurial or they had made money in the past. And so just, I know from personal experience, having led a company as a COO and as an interim CEO myself that had franchise stores. I know from experience what it's like to deal with some of those personalities and make sure they're following the damn rules and things like that. So that's challenging enough. If you're doing that and dealing with a massive cap table and PE money and all this, now you're really bogged down with managing a bunch of big personalities. And so the fact that you're not having to do that on the PE side is great. So if you're interested in, by the way, you said you're opening up 16 more stores this year. Are those
Yeah, we're going to try to. That's
okay. Are those
on
deals
the
done?
agenda.
Are you looking for more franchisees, or those are already signed?
No, those are existing franchisees, open stores 3, 4, 5. One thing that we've opened a lot during even last year during COVID, these were existing franchisees.
Okay.
So nothing tells you more success than existing franchisees opening more stores. Now we're, we've had a few new ones come on board, and we're just, opening stores, when they come through. But we have a lot of pent up demand, especially in the real estate market. I think franchising in this, especially in smaller spaces like this, there's a real opportunity to lower your cost, obviously, on in, because the real estate is falling off a little bit. And I think there will be more opportunity within that.
Couldn't agree more.
Especially when you're health food focused.
I couldn't agree more. Totally agree. On the health food focus, you're going to grab up some commercial real estate that is a hell of a lot cheaper than it used to be. I think there's some wonderful opportunities there.
But we're growing, and I feel that a lot of our store owners have owned multiple ones of these. So you're not growing and having multiple if you're not doing well.
Agreed. Agreed. Do I have to go to like, if you buy a Subway, don't you have to go to Alabama or something for a 2-week training class in a store or something? Do you guys do that?
We come to you. So if you open there's a whole process to it, and but we come to you. So basically there's a online process, and then a week or so before you open, say 10 days before you open, in that range, we send a team out to you and we train them there in your location. So prior to that, we're working with you weekly, daily, almost more than a year ahead of time on what each part, what to do, what's working, this is the timetable for this. This is when you should order this. This is the design. We have, our design that you can see behind me. That is important for the brand. And we're constantly.
Can you tell me how much it's going to, what my initial investment's going to have to be roughly, or can you share that?
Well, it depends. It depends on what you're doing. If you're doing 1 store, 3 stores, one store deal based on this year is $39,000 as a franchise fee. A royalty is 5%. It's 6%. Sorry about that. And it's a 2% marketing fee. So 8% basically all in. The marketing fee, the 2% marketing royalty, it's not a royalty, but marketing fee goes directly back into the marketing fund. So we use that for marketing.
Understood. Yep.
It's
Understood.
clean.
What's
The
the average
royalties
build
used-
out? What's the average build out?
It really depends in our FDD, it's about 194,000, including equipment and other items. So it's a really inexpensive build out, relatively speaking. And it can be less, honestly, and it can be more depending on where you are, but certainly we hope to have it less even, but that's generally the range of what it would be.
Can I get a store open and get operating and start putting money in the bank with 300 grand?
I would hope so. It's hard to tell. I can't legally or any which way tell you exactly. It depends on how you run it. Depends on what type of dollars you put in or marketing you put into it, your own marketing along with ours. But I would be hopeful that you could do that, certainly, and build a business pretty well with that number. But it depends also where you're opening. Are you opening in an area of the country that, build out's reasonable? Or are you opening in the height of Palo Alto or New York City that the build out's going to skew higher than that?
Yep.
So really, we give a range on our franchise agreement and FDD, and you can go through all those numbers. We're happy to walk you through those numbers and take it from there.
Okay, very good. I know I'm hitting you with some hard questions there on what it's like to get going on the investment, but I just know that people listening, that those are the first questions. How much does it cost? How much do I have to spend? What am I going to make? I mean, the product itself, the marketing and the product is really excellent. I mean, great job on the marketing, the look, the feel of the brand. I don't know if you did all that yourself or if you hired a creative marketing agency to do all that for you, but really it's good, like super solid, man. I mean, it's attractive. It feels good, feels right. Everything on the surface looks good. If I'm also making money when I invest in it, then it's totally awesome.
And there's certainly no it's a team effort across the board. So, we have good people. Everyone who works for me right now has managed a store, which is really unusual too. So they can feel the experience that a franchisee/partner does. They've managed it. They understand. I really hire from within. I think that makes a big difference. And they understand the challenges of running a business. And someone's on call 24/7. You have a problem, we have someone answering the phones. We really believe in customer support, not just for our customers on a customer level that are coming in buying a bowl, but our franchisees, because ultimately they're our customers too. And we have to do a great job for them as well as our customers on the storefront.
How many employees for the company? Not counting, not the franchise.
Right. And we have a lot of different employees doing different things. Certainly we have, people focused on just franchising. Then we have people on social media. We have, website design, some outsourced, some internal. So there's a lot of people, there's a lot of moving parts to these things. So.
Okay. So I know we got about 7 minutes left here. I could keep you for another 3 hours, by the way, but I want to ask you a couple of things here. What advice, if I wanted to start, if I have a restaurant and I want to franchise it and I'm listening to this episode, what are 2 or 3 things that you would tell that person knowing what you know now? What would you say? What advice would you give them? They have one location, they're thinking about franchising. What would you say?
Well, certainly franchising, there's a lot of legal work in franchising, tons, standardization. It's not easy. It's a business that you really have to think what's your objective on. And a lot of people actually ask me about franchising and call me up and look for help. I'm pretty involved with the Ben network here in Boulder and Silicon, Flatirons and stuff like that. But, keeping everything standardized is really hard. And even though you have a formula, having everything look alike and similar, it's really difficult. So you got to think it really through. You got to think, okay, this is where we are today. Where do we want to, how do we replicate it? How do we get to, down the alphabet to the letter, M, P, or whatever it may be, how to get there and how to do it in a way that you bring on partners. There's going to be challenges, especially early in a franchise. There's a lot more challenges as things get more standardized early on. And certainly we had our own challenges with particular franchisees that, weren't fully or came about or took time, but it happened. And some of them are, our greatest supporters, and most of them are incredible, really incredible. But it is a challenge in all fronts, and you really got to think it through. You got to think of, how do I get to 2 stores, and how do I get to 10? How do I get to 50? Looking, even now, I'm like, we're at 33 or so stores. I'm like, how do we get to 50? How do we get to 100? And honestly, it may be a different person that gets us from 100 to 1,000, because I have a certain skill set, but someone else may have a different skill set to bring you to the next level. And I'm a startup guy. I like building things, but certainly I think there's people that may have even a better skill set than I to bring the company to the next level.
You still got the wholesale business, don't you?
Yeah, that was a fascinating challenge and incredible business, really. We were in 40 states with that, mostly with Whole Foods and others.
I see.
I had a co-packer that was making it. It was a little bit of a different product, but again, it was a product that needed to be explained. It was bowls. Again, I started that in 2010, basically around that 2010, 2011, and we were in frozen shells. So you would naturally thaw it or microwave it. We had a lot of success with it, and my co-packer out of the blue went out of business on me. So we had no product to make. So by then also, because we were doing it for 6-7 years, and then by then franchising started taking off. So I just kind of stopped that, put that on the back burner. We get demand all the time for that, actually, still to this day. And I think it helps as we grow our franchising. People who are familiar or heard the name before. So at some point down the line, I'll see, but we may even relaunch it at some point to complement our franchisees, to provide another avenue for them to sell product. But again, that's not in the plans in the near term by any means.
Okay, very good. If you had to, because I think you're my age, maybe 1 year older or so, you're probably 54, 55, I'm guessing.
Sure.
If you had to call your 21-year-old self coming out of undergrad school and tell that young Andrew anything, if you could call him and tell him anything, what would it be based on what you've learned so far?
I think take a deep breath, work hard, but kind of enjoy the moments a little bit at a time, because you look back and, you're just so grinding. Smell the roses, and sometimes till you figure that out, you're a lot older and didn't sniff around as much as you probably should have. So
it's so true, isn't it? I think about that all the time now as I get older. I never thought that way when I was younger.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, you get in your mid 50s, you start looking in the mirror thinking, damn, okay, yeah, it's I don't have that many years left. I might want to smell the flowers a little bit more.
You appreciate it. One also thing I would say that when I graduated college, I went right to work, literally weeks. And one of my biggest regrets is I didn't travel through Europe or whatever else at that time, because you had no responsibilities, right? So you could really explore. And there's always work waiting for you somewhere or another. It may not be ideal, but yeah.
That's true. And now you're still married
Yes.
to the same lovely woman that put up with you when you said, I'm quitting my job and moving to Colorado. You still married?
Yeah, surprisingly, but yeah,
awesome.
I am.
Congratulations. And you said you have 2 children?
Yes.
Teenagers now or grown?
One just graduated college and is going right to work, which obviously, my influence there, but unfortunately, my daughter is she's going to be a junior at University of Michigan.
Either one of them interested in helping dad run the business?
No, I don't think so, quite frankly, but I'm always kind of like my parents were. Do whatever you want to do. I don't really, this is not an heirloom to my children, nor would I have created it that way. At some point, we'll grow it, and either, we have a lot of interest in people that are interested in the company now even, but at some point, I you build a great company, great things happen, but at some point, it's, like I said, it's not an heirloom to my children. I'll probably sell it at some point.
Okay. Retirement at some point. Or if you had to put, last question, if you had to put Andrew's core purpose into a sentence, your core purpose in life now that you're in your mid 50s and you've been through a bunch, what would that core purpose sound like?
That's a tough one, because there's so many different avenues that you feel. What I would enjoy the most is mentoring and really working with businesses, and I deal with a lot of young, employees in a lot of different levels, from starting out to late 20s, 30s, and then some older. But I think understanding business and the ebb and flow of it, and the benefits of it, and what works and what doesn't, I think that's one of the areas that I think is really important, and I think that's a great focus for me. I almost wish I could focus more on that, because I'm constantly in motion building a business, that sometimes people see it, but it's not that one-on-one that I would love to do more of.
Very good. Andrew, congratulations on everything that you've done so far. You got another 15, 16 stores to open this year, so you're busy.
Yeah, that's for sure. We all are.
Rushbowls.com. Congrats to you and the team. Appreciate you being on the show.